Building the Yurt platform. We have plans available. You can also look online for other suitable designs. You just want to end up with a circle, same size as your yurt. Plus or minus 1 inch is fine. Build the platform on a base of concrete block. No frost footing is necessary unless you're building on a hillside. Build it 12 to 18 inches up for ventilation. Building too high creates a psychological distancing from the outside. Avoid kiln-dried lumber for framing as it rots easily. Rough-sawn hemlock is excellent. Insulation under the floor is optional, but be sure to stop drafts. Bat insulation is not recommended. Build the deck or stairs 1 inch apart from the platform and 1 step down. Make sure to have these done by raising day. The skirt board or bender board goes around the yurt. Extend it 2 inches above the floor and no more than 7 inches below. Leave a 47-inch gap for the door. Raising day. Schedule the raising for a nice day. Rain is no good. Neither is wind. Gather a crew of 7 to 11 people, depending on the size of the yurt, the carry distance, the height of the platform off the ground, etc. Tall people will be very helpful. Provide snacks, water, and lunch for the crew. Start early. It will take all day. Unloading the yurt. Set the skylight and the ring off to the side. Set the door on the deck. Set the fabric parts on clean ground in the general vicinity of the door. Disperse the rafters around the perimeter on clean ground. Carry the lattice onto the deck. It's very heavy, so be careful. Installing the door. Unwrap the door and set it in place. It is an outswing door. The threshold intersects the arc of the platform directly below each jamb. The yurt floor protrudes about 1 inch in the center. It can be flashed or caulked later. The hinge side of the threshold should be touching the skirt board. There should be about a 1 inch gap at the latch side. Screw the door to the floor through the threshold, just outside of the jambs. Use 2 4-inch screws. Angle the screws slightly in so they can be backed out later when the lattice is in the way. Plumb the door and brace it plumb with the 2 boards. Rafters can work in a pinch. Screw the braces to the header over the jambs, not to the side of the door jamb wings. Screw the lower ends of the braces to the yurt floor. Remove the transport screw holding the door closed and unwind the latch string to open the door. Run the latch string through the hole into the yurt. Later, it can be tied off inside to make it easier to operate. Remove the screws holding the side clamps. You will need the side clamps soon. Now attach the wooden awning atop the door header. The long edge faces out. Center the awning and cantilever it out till the notch cutout lines up with the outer edge of the door header. Now nudge it out a little more, leaving a tiny 1/8-inch gap at each side. The roof flap will tuck in here. Now use the 4 side clamp screws to attach the awning. The screws should be 5/8 of an inch from the inside edge of the awning. Stay 2 inches away from the ends to prevent splitting. Lastly, install the door handle provided on the inside of the door at a comfortable height. Erecting the lattice. The lattice is heavy. Transport it onto the deck. Be careful of the skirt and of damaging the flooring. Lift the lattice upright. The end with the screws goes up. Unstrap it and open it carefully. Watch your fingers. The pointy part of the screws ends up inward. Now uncoil the lattice till the ends reach opposite sides of the door. Hold it well so it doesn't fall over. Insert the carriage bolts from outside through the jamb wings. Start with the top ones. After going through a diamond in the lattice, the carriage bolt passes through the side clamp, so you're making a lattice sandwich. The washers and wing nuts go on the inside. Don't tighten them. Push the lattice all the way back to the skirt, all the way around the yurt, and begin to level it out. The endmost lattice screws should be level with the top of the door header. Do not use a tape measure yet. Continue roughly leveling by eyeballing the diamond widths. Move the lattice from the narrowest to the widest diamond areas. Go easy. A tiny adjustment makes a big difference. When it looks right, check 3 to 4 spots with a tape measure. Plus or minus half an inch is good enough. There's no correct number. From the outside, screw through the skirt into the bottom of the lattice with the 1 5/8" screws provided. The tension cable is in the grain sack. Unroll it and spread it out on the floor around the perimeter. Now set the cable on the lattice. The cable goes between the inner and outer lattice members. The cable may seem loose, but don't worry, it's the right length. The cable wants to rest on the screws, touching each one. If necessary, open the lattice nuts just enough to slide the cable down to rest on the screws. If a lattice nut won't loosen, remove the cable and squeeze the lattice together. Don't use a wrench. Hit the lattice with a hammer. Then you can loosen the nut. The cable runs over the door. Pass it behind the temporary braces. Do not tighten the lattice nuts yet. Now, once the cable is atop and touching each lattice screw, eyeball the lattice for plumbness all around. The lattice can be plumbed by moving the cable from out-leaning sections to in-leaning sections. To do this, have 2 people leapfrog each other. Plumbing the lattice by eye is sufficient. No level is needed. Typically, very little wall plumbing is necessary. Installing the rafters. This is written for a crew of 10 to 11 people, but it can be done with fewer if you're creative. First, set up the rafters for easy access from the inside. Set the rafters butt ends on the ground, tips at waist height, poking through the lattice just a bit, about a foot. There's no pattern to where they should be sticking through, just put them all around. Now, set up the stepladder in the center of the yurt. Bring the roof ring in through the door. Set it upright against the rear wall with the beveled face inward. This is a good time for everyone to put on their hard hats. Children and observers must be outside until raftering is complete. Now start by inserting 2 rafters into opposite holes in the bottom face of the ring, left and right. 20-foot yurts with 6-foot walls and 25-foot yurts with 5-foot walls require special raising poles because the rafters are not the right length to use for raising. With 2 people footing the rafter bases, have 2 other people raise the ring. 1 or 2 people will hold the ring up for the next 15 minutes. They should be standing inside and beneath the ring inside the stepladder. If you're using 2 people, they will be back to back. Don't use the tallest people here. They will be needed elsewhere. Now, have 6 people arrange themselves evenly around the edge of the yurt. 3 to the right, 3 to the left. Keep 3 floater people separate. 2 will install the plastic rafter keepers, and 1 will be the ladder person. Now, have everyone grab a rafter. Notice that it has a tenon at one end and a slot at the other. Also notice that it is not perfectly straight. It has a slight bow called a crown. The crown is perpendicular to the slot at the bottom. Now, hold your rafter at chest height. Look across the yurt. The person opposite you is your buddy. Working in sync with them, insert your rafter into a hole. You do not have to be precisely opposite each other, but you need to work together so that you do not push the people in the center over. Work the tenons in fully. This takes strength and persistence. Wiggle it around, up and down, left and right, till you find the sweet spot. You cannot see your own tenon, so help each other out to know when it is fully inserted. Do not set the rafter butts on the cable yet. Now, rotate your rafter so that the crown bows upward and the slot in the butt is horizontal. Those people who are done first, just be patient and keep sufficient pressure on till everyone is done. The 3 floating people should go around and help out where needed. When all the rafters are in and crowned, and all the slots are horizontal, give the signal, and everyone pushes together. The ring will rise. The person or people in the center should raise their supports slightly, but not push up too much. Now, all the slots get nested onto the cable. Don't worry at this point which lattice bay to go in. Correct placement is not important at this time. Just put them where they feel right. Stay holding onto your rafter. Do not walk away from it at this point. Get comfortable and wait until both the top and bottom of your rafter are secured. Now the 2 floaters should pick up their screw guns, get some plastic keepers and some 1 5/8 screws, and go outside the yurt. The keepers get screwed to the butts of the rafters through the 2 keeper holes, 1 hole up, 1 hole down. Once a butt is keepered, the ladder person can screw through the central ring into the tenon of the rafter with 2.5-inch screws. The ladder person must double check the crowns of the rafters at this point before they get screwed in. Some rafters may need to be unkept and reversed. The ladder person must also make sure each tenon is fully inserted before screwing into it. Some rafters may need a little hammering from the butt to fully insert the tenon. Don't worry, the keeper plastic is super strong. Some exposed tenon shoulder is typical. When your rafter is keepered and screwed, you can safely move on and put another rafter in. Fill all the big gaps first. Do not put too many rafters in one section at once. Remember not to leave an unkept rafter unattended. This is very important. Rarely the central ring starts off out a level. If it is visibly off, prop it up on the low side until raftering is complete. Upon removing that prop, the ring will remain level. The tension cable may be slightly egg-shaped to start, and some rafters will seem too short, but they aren't. Put rafters in on the other side of the yurt, and the long side of the egg will slowly get pulled in. Putting rafters in will get harder and harder as you go, so get creative. Never put a rafter in adjacent to an unkept rafter. It may fall on you. So, the thing about not getting too far ahead of the keepers. Right. Yeah. There are 2 rafters over the door, spaced to match normal rafter spacing, about 18 to 20 inches apart. The rafters over the door capture the cable, but they do not get keepers. They do need to get their tenons screwed in. When all the rafters are in place, spread them out. The rafter to lattice pattern ratio depends on the yurt side. There is no correlation between rafters and lattice tops. To move the ladders from one bay to the next, do not remove its keeper. Just hop the rafter. Really, this works. The exception to this is where the tension cable joins. To hop the lattice here, you must remove the keeper. Rafters in adjacent lattice bays should be spread to the far sides of their respective bays. When you are done, all the rafters should be evenly spaced. Double check that the tension cable has not jumped out anywhere. If it has, put it back in. There, now you can breathe. You can all take your hard hats off if you want. To finish, tighten the lattice nuts with a 9mm wrench, or better yet, a deep socket.